everyone. So, like you, I'm a parent of a child, as you know, with special health care needs, and I know that sense of dread that keeps us up at night, thinking about the future and what's going to happen, once my child is out of school and no longer supported by an IEP and the school system, and just it's a very scary future. And so I'm sure you've heard these statistics, but individuals with disabilities are less likely to attend post-secondary schooling, have a paying job, be productively engaged in their communities, and live independently. And I think that Emily is 27, so I've done some of this, but not all of it, and not that well. So I really need to listen to this breakout. But I think that's why it's so important to start the post-secondary transition process, that planning process early, and starting to think about the school district should do it when your child is 14, definitely by 16, but I think that with your IEP team, your child, any other professionals or family members or anybody who knows your child well and you want to include in that process, you need to really start to think about your child's strengths, their preferences, and their needs, so you can start to assess what are some of the best decisions to make for their post-secondary life. What supports will they need? What are their interests, their strengths, areas of need? And this information can become the framework for a transition support services plan, right? Okay, which is used to aid their transition from school to post-school. And so, anyway, as I mentioned, these plans are based on their needs, preferences, strengths, and interests, and include discussions around vocational services, independent living, post-secondary education, employment, adult services, and community involvement. So to that end, I'm thrilled to welcome Tim Spong, who is a specialist in this area and also a grandfather to a CAC-NUA champion, Tandra, Hunter-Payne, and Tracy Wright, who are going to lead this discussion. So I will.
Thanks, Lisa. Go enjoy your interview. So.
Thank you. I'll be back in a minute.
Well, welcome. I know this age group needs to hear about this as well. What we're going to do, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to do basically two things. Basically, we're going to talk to y'all about vocational rehab, both from a general perspective and then from a visual impairment perspective. So I'm joined with two of my colleagues here. It's the 3 T's today. It's Tandra. She's a deputy director with Maryland Vocational Rehab. And then later, remember I told y'all you're going to get another dose of advocacy. And so Tracy's here from People on the Go Maryland, and we've got some slides with her as well. So I'm probably standing in front of the slides. So anyway, I'm going to go through the entire process of vocational rehab through the view of people that ask questions. I've noticed a lot of others do this. I thought this was going to be a novel idea, but I'll take that clicker. And so what we'll do too is we'll cover our part, me and Tandra, and then we'll take questions if you have any, and then we'll turn it over to you. Okay. By the way, this is the first time we've ever met each other. So vocational rehab. Let's see if I know how to use this thing. What's the purpose of VR? It's basically what Lisa just said. It's to assist people with disability to prepare for, find, keep, and advance in employment. That's the bureaucratic way to write it, okay? How is the program funded? It's through the U.S. Department of Education. So whether you're in Maryland or Texas, I was in the Texas VR system for a long time, but there's some differences, but every state has to follow the rules. And here's our first question for you is, it's well liked on both sides of the aisle in Washington. So why is that? Think about it. Why? It's well liked on both sides of the aisle. In other words, even in today's world, without going down too much of that road, it's liked on both sides of the aisle. Because we're making taxpayers out of people. And instead of people that are on the other side, these folks are paying taxes. So it's very popular in that regard. Okay? So it works its way down through the states. And this is something that We're going to talk about, I think, down the road as well from another perspective, your referral sources, your doctors, psychologists, audiologists, ophthalmologists, schools. That's going to be the big one. Schools, by far, are the biggest referral for vocational rehab, without a doubt, for this age group here, okay? CACNA 1A friends and others, I think that's going to be huge with this community. So in an application, we're gonna start the process usually at age 14. 14 is when we might go into the school and begin to talk to the school staff. And this is why you're going to get to hear another dose of advocacy because it's not always smooth. I'll leave the mystery for you. But so we're going to gather information. We're going to begin to build the case. And it depends on each state. Some states have transition counselors that are going to go through. They're full-time working with school staff. That's all they do. They don't work with people that snap their neck when they fall off an Austin scaffolding, because we deal a lot with that too, okay? So, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. When you say vocational rehab, so like I'm in Illinois and we have transition, right? So transition's like 18 to 22. Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Or are you talking about
Yep.
post-transition?
No, you're right on track.
Okay.
Transition is a subset of vocational rehab. Okay.
So we're not talking about beyond that.
Yeah, well, and transition is exactly, in fact, we're going to talk about transition. So, yeah, you're spot on. Yeah.
Okay.
Transition is huge. In fact, in 1997, I'm privileged to be here in Washington, and the transition program it was a bipartisan attempt to really fund more for transition type counselors. So they're specially trained. Now, they're not always available. You know, if you live in Abilene, Texas, you may not have a specialist that's going to be right there for only transition. But there was money received for transition type programs, and particularly in the blind community, but I'm not going to steal your thunder just yet. So, okay, good question. So we're going to get records. We're going to get records from the school. We're going to get records from your doctors. In this case, we're going to get all of the neurological. Would we also do a neurological? Like we could possibly do a neuropsych ourselves. We might do the Wexler, the rat, all over again. We can if we want to. Everything diagnostic with vocational rehab is we're going to pay for that because we're looking for something that's no longer in an educational setting, but we're looking at it in terms of vocational potential. So it's not that we don't trust the schools, but things change, Puberty happens too. From some of the reports we get, tell me if I'm wrong, they're old psychologicals. We can't really, a psychological, in my opinion, is invalid after 3 years.
Okay.
So we might do our own.
So yeah, I'm still a little confused, and I apologize for. But so like in Illinois, they're mandated to let our persons of awesomeness be in school till they're 22, and that graduation through 22 they call transition, and it's taught by special education teachers.
Right.
But I mean, of course, they're like, okay, this kiddo is heading for community college, and this one's heading for a job, and this one's heading for a recreation, which is like special recreation. But so this isn't mandated throughout the United States. Like people from Illinois are like moving to Michigan because they have these services till they're 27, right?
Yeah. Now I think what you might be talking about, tell me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
is you're talking about an educational, you can be in public school, school till you're 22.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
In Illinois.
Yeah, well, this program that we're talking about right now, we're ready to go ahead and take them on because they've left school. Now, they may have been in school till 22, and they still will be eligible for VR services.
Okay.
But we have some, for example, I'm an older guy now, but I had clients that are in high school, and today, 2 of them are surgeons. But they came from the VR program. So I guess I tell you that because we're dealing with people with all different types of disabilities, just to keep you in mind. Yeah. But Sure.
You know, you bring up a good point. The thing that, in terms of in Maryland, I can only speak to Maryland, we start at age 14. However, although your students are still in school, we go directly into the school system. We help, we are part of the IEP team. We start them early, and I'll talk about we call it pre-ETS, but it's education transition services. We start with them at 14. So in the summertime, when they're out of school, they can go to various programs. They can job shadow. They can work with, you know, I want to be an engineer. What does that look like? How can I do that? You know, I have a disability. This is how you do it. They start, so they can start doing some exploration to see what they want to do. So we start that at age 14. And Congress, a few years ago, mandated that the states have to spend at least 15%, mandated 15% of their budget to administer pre-ET services. So every state, no matter if I don't care if you're in California, Maryland, they have to spend at least 15% of their budget on pre-ET services. And there are 5 categories that I'll talk about in terms of what they can do. But it's amazing. In Maryland, I can tell you that we have counselors in every public school in Maryland. There's a counselor attached. Some of the schools are better than others in terms of letting us know. We've been always known as the best kept secret. Like, a lot of people don't know about vocational rehabilitation. Some people do. And sometimes it's tough working with parents as well. So, but I'll talk about pre-ETs and what that means from 14. The other thing that's really important to know is the educational system is entitlement. You're entitled to a free education. When you get to the vocational side or the adult side, that's not the case. It's eligibility. So you have to be eligible for our services. So you have to go through an eligibility process, which Tim is going to talk about in a minute. You have to go through an eligibility process. Once you're eligible, then we start the planning process, the plan, and how we're going to help you through all of that.
Okay, okay. Sure.
I now realize we've been getting notices that the vocational people are coming into like the high school to do talks, and we can go meet with them, and I haven't yet, but now I know I need to, so.
Yeah, good.
I don't know if ours goes to 22, I don't know. I think LAUSD might, but we're in a charter school, so we would have to transfer over. Yeah, that's tricky. Right, yeah.
So, yeah, well, in Paul's case, I'm going to go out on a limb here. It's safe to say that he has an ARD meeting, you know, admission, referral, and dismissal. You know what that, did y'all call it that term?
Not yet.
Okay,
I
well.
mean, he's still a sophomore, going into junior.
Right, because there's an excellent chance Paul could go till he's 22. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna do that.
Yeah,
with him.
right. But that doesn't mean, to Tandra's point, we're going to be involved. But one thing that's real important, and this is why I'm glad we've been talking about advocacy a lot, because I'm going to pick on the school for just a teeny tiny bit. I should, because sometimes they're more than happy, not all the time. I don't want to paint them all with the same brush, but they're more than happy to say, vocational rehab, it's all yours. And we want to know more about what did you do in those final years? I mean, what was there anything, you know, and we may do some more testing. We may do a vocational evaluation with Paul. You know, there's other things that we might be interested in. We're not trying to undermine the school, but, you know, because we don't know. We're just getting the records. So, you know, good question. Let's see if this thing, okay, so, well, here's the eligibility criteria. This is a physical, mental, or cognitive disability that affects ability to work. Require VR services in order to locate or retain employment and be able to find and retain employment after receiving services. Those are the 3 criteria. So you're correct. It's not an entitlement program. So if you let's say you fractured your arm, okay? That's a medical condition. That's not a disability. So, you know, it's going to heal. You don't have a barrier to employment long term. The biggest population of people that come to vocational rehab are 18 to 30-year-old males. They jump off cliffs. They play football. They ride motorcycles. They snap their back. They they take risk. Some of the girls do too, to make it fair. But for the most part, 18 to 30-year-old males sit in our waiting rooms quite a bit. Yeah. And so that's a big population. So eligibility. So they're eligible, big deal. What happens next? Well, we're going to identify goods and services to achieve a vocational goal. And this could include additional diagnostic activities, a vocational evaluation, career planning. We're useless, our program, is if we don't get input from who we're working with. You know, it's easy for us to go, no, I'm sorry, Paul, you're going to be doing this. You know, we don't want to hear about what your interests are. Wow, what kind of program would that be? So this may take some time because we're going to do discovery. I think you used the term, you know, they might do some job shadowing. I mean, this is not a sprint. It could be a marathon. You know, it takes time. What else can we tell you?
On the prior page, one of the criteria was that you be able to find and retain employment. So if someone's very substantially disabled, let's say like an intellectual disability,
Yes.
they be disqualified because
Great question. You get the golden cookie today. Let me. In other words, the question is, tell me if I'm wrong, is do we work with people who might be too severe to be able to meet the eligibility criteria? And here's my answer. By federal law, whether you live in Maryland or Texas, you have to have clear and convincing evidence that this person cannot work. We can't just go in and go, well, that's just the way it is. You know, we can't help you out. We have to do these things of taking time, job shadowing, the things that we talked about. We have to have a concerted effort, and particularly somebody with an intellectual disability or somebody where we are required. And then when you can get advocacy involved, and they should, when you have a counselor that's quick to go, you know, we can't help them. That's not a good answer, you know. And so we're going to do everything that we can, you know. I mean, it's not like just close the case.
Awesome question. So we do have a category that says too severe. However, in Maryland, we cannot close someone too severe until we have demonstrated that this person is too severe. I can tell you that I have a case right now where the doctors have said this person will never go to work. That doesn't matter. We're doing trial work, meaning allow them to try. Allow them to try. There are sometimes where we would be more likely to close a case for a person who says, I don't want to work. And we get people like that. Parents say, no, you're going to work. And the person says, I don't want to work. Well, our whole program is about working. So there are things in place so that we can say, okay, you're having some challenges. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can put in place. Let's see what kind of accommodations we can put in place to help you. So in Maryland, I don't know about other states. I know other states do things differently. There is a category that says the person is too severe, but we have to do things before we can do that. Assessments, or we have to do trial work, meaning let them go out and work. Let's determine if this person is too severe. Okay.
I think this is for you too, Tandra. Tell me if I'm wrong. That's going to be at least a 10 to 15 month process. It's not, you know, we're going to look at this school record and make a decision. That's not how it works. The agency has to do something to further demonstrate the clear and convincing evidence. And here's the good news, is we don't really have that many too severe. I mean, it may not be easy all of the time where they're working initially, because we're going to tell you about a program here after a while that maybe helps facilitate that. So no, that's the golden cookie. that one's an automatic. So does that answer? Yeah, it's not easy. We're not going to just close it. Okay, so yeah, we'll do additional diagnostics. And so here's some examples of goods and services that I was going to say DARS because that's where I used to work, but vocational rehab. We can pay for academic and college training. Now, they may not go to Harvard or UT or A&M. I think that's where you went, right? But they like, for example, if we pay tuition at Austin Community College and they have the means to use the student loan, not to get too far down this road, they're going to be able to go to a school as close as we can make it for them to go to and receive, you know, our program if that's what they choose. Vocational training, same thing, a 2-year course, a certificate, maybe some kind of associate degree. We had several in Texas. We call it Texas TSTC. It's a technical school. Sent a lot of kids there. And by the way, I have paper handouts as a special gift. Y'all don't have to take any. You can, but I've got handouts. A certificate program, on-the-job training. Now, this is going to be on the test later. On-the-job training is going to be different than supported employment, but we don't want to confuse you, okay? Vehicle modifications. We do vehicle modifications. We've done modifications in Austin that were $80,000. Why? Because this was the way that the business plan that we wrote for this individual, this is the only way they could be successful. Now, there's a lot, you know, it's easy for me to tell you that. There's caveats, but we do help with vehicle. Interpreter services is an automatic, artificial limbs. We've done that. We've done some myoelectric arms. Physical restoration. Now, just as a caveat, we're not an ongoing service. You know, this is the scope of services that we've decided on with our customer, and we've decided these services. So if they need some PT or OT or speech, it's directed at how does this help them overcome the barrier to employment, okay? It's not going to be, you know, well, I just feel I need PT, you know. So, okay. So now we're going to write the plan. I think here is where we might start tying in some blind services. I'll let you run with this one.
Okay, so, the twanger. So now we've identified all the services. We know, we've talked with the family, we've talked with the student, we have done all the assessments, and now we move to the next phase, which is an IPE, or the Individualized Plan for Employment. That's what it's called on our side, as opposed to an IEP. We now go into an IPE. Okay, so within every agency is different in terms of how what services they cover. One of the things that Tim talked about is college. One of the big pushes from Congress is now that we look at really having people have careers, not that working at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's is a bad thing, because some people come in, that's all I want. I want to work I want to do custodial work. But if someone comes in and says, you know what, I really want to go to law school, I really want to be an engineer, I really want to be a self-published author, then those are the things that we're looking at. We may have goals in front of that until we get there, but those are the things that we really want to look at. We really want to make sure self-employment is a big one. Self-employment for people who want to I want to work on my own, especially people who want to work at home. I want to have a home-based business. Okay, so we're going to look at some things. We're going to look at some labor market stuff. We have to make it real. We have to put it in front of the consumer so they understand. Some of the things the IPE contains is the vocational goal. What is your goal? I want to be an engineer. I'm going to be a bioengineer. Responsibilities of the customer. What are you responsible for? In different states, the amount of money is different. So if in some states, if you have a college goal on your plan, for example, some states, the state is going to pay the entire amount, no matter if you go to Harvard or you go to community college. Other states, you have to pay a portion. It just depends. The responsibilities of the agency. So on this plan, you will know who is paying what to the penny. In Maryland, on your plan, you'll know. Maryland, we're paying $20,000. You're going to get equipment. You'll know exactly what you're going to get. The beauty of the plan is that it's not cemented in stone. It can always change. Let's just say, as you're going along, you realize you need something else. Oh, you know what? My wheelchair, while I was doing this, my wheelchair is no longer operable. And we work with the insurance company. Is there something that VR can help with? Yes, VR can help with those things. So we may have to do what we call an amendment to add things to the plan. Your goal may change. You know, I'm a sophomore in college now. I don't really want to be an engineer now. I really want to be a teacher. Those things change. It can always change. However, it serves as a contract between the agency and the family so that there's no misunderstanding about who's doing what. It can be taken to court. If we don't do what we say we're going to do, you can take us to court and say, but this is a legal document. So it's very, very, very important. There's also information about comparable benefits and services. What that means is the VR dollar is supposed to be the last dollar spent. So we look at all other agencies to see. So like, for example, if you're going to college, you have to apply for financial aid. It's a must. In Maryland, if you don't apply for financial aid, we won't even look at it because you have to. We have to look at other dollars first. Even if you don't get anything, you know, your family makes too much money, you don't get anything, as long as we have that FAFSA or that free financial aid form, then we can say no problem. That's what we look at. And then there's information about the Client Assistance Program. The Client Assistance Program is a separate agency that will advocate for the consumer if VR doesn't do, or they have a question, or we don't do what we say we're going to do. The Client Assistance Program is there as an advocate for the consumer and the families to be like a go-between to say, hey, what happened? And sometimes we will even tell people, I know I do, you know what, because we can't come to an agreement, there's the Client Assistance Program. You know, this is their number, call them, because maybe they can look at it a different way. And I talked about this, can you change your goal? Absolutely, you can change it 1 billion times. For example, let me give you another example, equipment changes. So we purchase a $10,000 Braille display, and the person no longer, they're having problems with neuropathy in their hands and they can no longer read Braille. Well, there's another piece of equipment that person now needs. I completed my plan, now I'm ready to work. So you've gone to college, you've done some things, I think this stopped. I think the microphone stopped, or can you still hear me? Maybe it's just not hearing. You know, what do I do? It stopped? Okay. So once you're ready once you've completed all the goals in your plan, or most of them, you're ready to go to work. Okay, VR, so what are you going to do? How are you going to help me? Your counselor is still with you. You have, in Maryland, you have a business counselor, and they will work with you to find employment. Most often, consumers at this time, because they've advocated for themselves, they've had all the skills they need, they go out and find their own job. And they'll say, VR, well, what can you do? We can go and we can talk with the employer at the consumer's request, go in and talk with the employer, talk about accommodations. Sometimes it's really easy because it's a lighting situation or it's an accessible desk, and sometimes it's very challenging. When we work with like large corporations, it's very challenging because they may have a proprietary software that if you're blind and you're using JAWS or another software, they don't talk to each other, so it's very hard. And sometimes companies will relent, and sometimes they won't. So sometimes, you know, we have to get EEOC involved, you know, all kinds of situations. But we help with all of that. Oh, 2 minutes? Okay. So can you use VR again? So the case is closed. Your son or daughter is successful. They go off, and boom, they hit a rock in the road. Can I come back to VR again? Yes, as long as it's disability related, that same eligibility criteria that we talked about in the beginning, that comes into play again. But yes, we have a lot of people who come back. One of the things that we're doing now that we're really going to be focusing on is helping people financial literacy. How, you know, talking about how do you keep your job, saving money, your credit report, all those things that are so important, paying your bills, budgeting, because so many people come back because they say, you know what, I want to go back on disability because I don't have enough money. Well, why? You know, how do you do that? How do you use work incentives through the federal government to make sure you have enough money. So we're going to be in Maryland focusing on that a lot.
So they can come back even if they're like 28?
It doesn't matter. They can be 78 and come back.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Am I required to participate in the cost of services? Some states, yes. Some states, no. It really depends on the state you're in terms of how much or if you have to participate at all. In Maryland, we just went to a no cost last July. As long as the money is flowing, then we can continue to do that, but that could change at any time. What I can tell you is you will never have to pay for a diagnostic. If we're needing information, you will never have to pay for that. That is free in any state. The last thing, specialty caseloads, blind, visually impaired, deaf and hard of hearing, students with disabilities. The last thing I'll tell you about is pre-ed services, and that's for students age 14 to 21. And that's when I tell you we go into the school system. We do all kinds of things with them over the summer. We call it a Weeble, work-based learning experience. So we have students who right now this summer, they're working. They're working at the Library of Congress. They're in engineering architecture firms. They're with NASA, the National Federation of the Blind, which is housed here in Maryland. They do a lot. I mean, they're setting off rockets. The kids are doing all kinds of things. There are special accommodations that are put in place for them. So we do a lot of exciting things. I know I'm out of time. Supported employment, just so you know, like for those who have more severe disabilities in terms of supported employment, there are things that are put into place. So DOORS is not, or VR is not long-term. Once you get your job, after 90 days, we close your case. For those students who need, or those individuals who need longer supports, then there are other agencies that we hand off. It's a handoff, but we're all in it together, and then we hand off. So if that person needs to live in a group home, or they need assisted living, the next agency is there, and they are lifetime services. They continue out until the person is no longer on the earth. So, talked about that.
Yeah.
So, and I'll be around for questions. I know we have to. I know Tracy's.
Yeah, Tracy. What Tracy's going to talk about, because time is flying. She's going to tell us about People on the Go here in Maryland, which Texas has a similar program. In every state there's that. And then she's going to also give us another dose of advocacy. Because when I heard that this morning, I'm like, okay, so yeah. Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, thank you. My name is Tracy Wright, and I'm the Deputy Director of People on the Go Maryland statewide self-advocacy group for people with intellectual and or developmental disabilities. We have about 400 members statewide, and we believe that advocating is so important, and it needs to start early for people with disabilities, because often people make decisions for us, and when we hit the adult world and people start asking us, well, what do you want to do, or what's your opinion about this, we don't know, because people have made those decisions. So at People on the Go, we really believe that people really need to know how to advocate for themselves. And what's important about advocating? Well, advocating, I guess, next slide, please, is really defending a position or in support of a position you have or against a position, and really understanding what's involved with all that. And for people with disabilities, again, a lot of times they're left out of those major decisions. They may be sitting at the table, but they're not asked for their input. And then when they hit the adult world, and maybe family isn't as involved anymore, then they don't know how to make those decisions. And a lot of times, for people with more significant disabilities, people assume, well, they can't. Well, a lot of times people can't because they've never been given an opportunity. I'm going to pose a question to everybody in this room. Have you ever made a decision when you were a young adult that wasn't the best decision for you? Did you learn from it because you didn't get to try, or did you learn because you had to get through the consequences of that decision? Now, nobody's saying people with disabilities should, be unsafe or not be protected or healthy or whatever. But that's how we learn how to make good decisions for ourselves, is trial and error. So in People on the Go, we really believe that people should be given that opportunity. And it should start, as early as possible, from what clothes do I want to put on to maybe different choices of what I do with my free time. And, again, we often hear, well, that's easy for you, Tracy, because you can communicate. But every single person in the world communicates. We just have to listen. And every single person in the world has preferences if they're given a choice to express those preferences and let you know. So we really think that advocating is so important in people's lives and that people should be taught about advocating. Next slide, please. So the importance of should, again, start from very young, and then it's an ongoing process. So maybe I start with what I'm going to do during the summer, and then maybe I work up to, well, maybe I don't want to live in my family home anymore. So what are the options for me if that's a possibility? What are the options for me for employment? Maryland has done a really good job around customized employment, and people with more significant needs have an opportunity to be business owners, to be part of the process. And I think that that's great. And the only way we're able to do that is, again, advocating. Everyone has that right and needs to understand that that's part of living, that's part of growing as a person, is being able to advocate together. And it's something that's ongoing. I mean, think about it. All of us aren't the same person we were yesterday because we had different experiences yesterday that may have changed the way we think about something or see something. So we really need to think about that as we're thinking about supporting our loved ones with disabilities. And I think also, it's a tool that is used, advocacy is a tool and a skill that's used throughout life. And everybody advocates for themselves for different things. So often, I know people with disabilities, they love to throw this term around Maryland that we don't like very much, self-advocate. And that really means most of the time the person with a disability. So we're going to get a self-advocate. And that's kind of made that word dirty to us. It's like, so you're just essentially saying person with a disability you went there. Because I do advocating for a living, but that doesn't mean all my peers do advocating for a living. So we're not all, professional at self-advocating for ourselves. We should know how to do it. We should know how much. Some of my friends that have taught me so much about advocacy are ones that have never sat down in a self-advocacy group. There are people I've come across in life that have taught me things about the importance of being themselves and true to themselves. And also, I think it's a good thing when it comes to advocacy to also the hidden parts of our disability, the things you can't see, sometimes are the hardest to talk about. But when you're thinking about accommodations, you have to be able to talk about those things. And they may not be comfortable to talk about, but if you start those conversations early so that your son, daughter, loved one knows what it is and what it is they are dealing with so they know how to talk about it, I think is so important. And it really can change the path of their lives. And every state, like Tim says, has an advocacy group. There's a national self-advocacy group called Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered, and they have lots of resources. They also have a self-advocacy technical assistance program, which is all online, and they offer meetings and topics about things of interest to people with disabilities. So all about around advocacy, and I think that's so important. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about why we think advocacy is so important to start from a very young age, and that every single person should do it, no matter their challenge or ability level. We all have a right to advocate for ourselves, for having the kind of life we want to have, and having input on the kind of life we're going to have. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, anybody have any questions? The people, my one question with the people on the go is it's basically developmental disabilities.
For us, it's intellectual and developmental disabilities. So what makes us such a strong group, I think, is that we include everybody. And we're actually going through a process here in Maryland where we're going to become our own nonprofit organization. And that's tricky because all our board are people with disabilities like myself, and so we have to learn a lot about what it takes to become a nonprofit, and we have to make sure that we have the supports in place to be successful. But we really feel that in order to grow, because one of the things we have started is we have started some neuro-inclusivity in our work, which means we have contractors that do certain things for us, like we have a contractor that does all our social media, and we have a contractor that does a lot of our public policy work. And so, but for them, some of the standards of typical work have been harder for them to meet because of their support needs. So we look at how can we best support you to be successful at getting your work done. What is it? Are we using the wrong kind of software or the wrong kind of format of paperwork that is an obstacle for you to be able to get your work done? Do you need it in a different kind of format or layout? What time frames work best for you, and what can we do to help you be most successful, and to figure out what works for you and what doesn't? So we're really hoping to grow that as we grow as an organization, to be able to hire more people with disabilities. And we're really proud that we're entirely run, we're a staff of 3, and we're entirely run by people with disabilities. All of us identify as having a disability. So we're excited about the opportunity to grow, and we really thank you for letting us be here, and we hope that your advocacy journey with your son or daughter will be one that you both will grow in and more comfortable with.
Well, thank you guys all for doing
Yes.
for doing what you do, because I'm terrified that Illinois has been known to be like 40th in the nation on like adult services for people with disabilities. And it really, really makes you think when you're 16, like, what is the difference? Like, you know, what is, we have advocacy groups, but like, I just don't understand why we're rated so low. I've got just so much to learn, right? It sounds like Maryland is very forward.
But you know, there's any way, I mean, I can maybe be the official VR Cagna 1A liaison, because, I mean, and especially like I've got colleagues still in Houston, by the way. So, but I mean, I've dealt with other states. States are different, and Texas.
And I just looked it up for Illinois, and it's definitely the school district.
Even though Texas is different in many ways, but in terms of VR, though, we're still, very proactive. They've been successful with, with a lot of our clients who are, we had 3 clients that were on TV that were one of them. You remember the guy that was behind the piano that won America's Got Talent? He was from our blind services. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, hopefully the breakout, I'm on the conference committee, so we were talking about the breakout session, and we're going to keep experimenting with this. So, but thank y'all for being our audience. Yeah, right. So if it's back in Maryland, we'll have these 2 back. So, sure.
I just have closing remarks. So the one thing I will say, and I have a business card, you can call me, even if you just want to just talk about VR. And you're right, every state is different. In Maryland, I mean, I'm biased to Maryland, but there are some pockets where we have like a lot of new staff, and sometimes it's really hard to hire people coming out of universities, and you have a person with a degree in, I don't know, something that's not related, and you're scrambling. A lot of states, they're scrambling, because we talk about this at our roundtables, just to get people, just to get butts in the seat, right? And I always say, as long as I have a person that cares, they have a heart. You don't have to have a master's degree or a PhD to have a heart. As long as you have a love and a heart for people, I can work with you, because I can't teach you to like and love and care about people. I can teach you VR. I can't teach you the other stuff. So if you can find like that one person who you can just attach to and just love on them, and get information as a parent, because that's hard sometimes to watch your child suffer. Just try to learn as much as you can about the system and how it works. Because if you go to VR and you're equipped with that knowledge and you sit across the desk, you can go to town. Because guess what? You have the knowledge. You know what's going on. Every VR should have a website that you should be able to know about eligibility and plan out. But sometimes that's hard to navigate. That's a whole bunch of stuff. We know it because I know it because I've been there for 30 years. But for a parent to go in there, it's like, I don't want to read all of this. But if you know someone, like you have a Tim, I can absolutely give you my card just to say, hey, I just have a question. I know you're in Maryland and I'm in Texas, or I'm here, or I'm there, but I just have a question. Can you tell me this? And even if I don't, I have a counterpart in every state. I personally run the Independent Living Older Blind program for people who are 55 and older, who don't want to go to work. So, but I manage the entire program, but that's my baby. But I can always answer a question for you. Always be willing to answer a question.
But when you meet that first meeting with Paul's VR contact, know that you've met somebody like Tracy that's a pro at advocacy, and she's probably, I don't want to speak for you, but at the same time, there's an excellent chance that there's somebody behind the scenes. A counselor that gets defensive is a counselor that's not gonna be productive. I've hired counselors that had the whole alphabet behind their name, and one of them 2 weeks later came into my office and said, "These people have problems." What? I had to go look in the mirror and go, "How did you hire me?" So that's the truth. So you're spot on. You'll see it because these are your kids. So, all right.
Thank
y'all.
Thank you.